friendship that'll never ever end.
Run!
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Reaction Video 798. In that neighborhood, my brothers and sisters. It is that time to get into another one of these true crime, horror, dark, deep, and mysterious, what the is going on type of videos. And today, it is Sunday. So y'all know that we about to go back to the man. We about to go back to the MILF. We about to go back to the legend, MrBallen. Back to the man, the MILF, the legend, Bean Team. And the title of the video is Her Nightmare Broke Reality. Now, throughout the years, y'all, I have had so many freaking just crazy and horrible nightmares, but I don't think any of them ever broke reality. So I'm very interested in what the freak kind of nightmare did this lady have. I don't know, but we're about to see. But before we see, Bean Team, y'all know what y'all got to do. Get whatever you may need. Get what you need, please. It is another MrBallen Sunday. Y'all got what y'all need. Y'all ready to go? Then let's go.
Today's story is wild. I mean, honestly, it doesn't even sound real, but we pulled the story directly from newspapers all around the world. So it definitely did happen. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, please swap out the like button spray deodorant for extremely harmful pesticide. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
Ballin'!
One evening in September of 1885, a young woman named Mary stepped out of the backseat of a carriage onto a dirt road in rural England. She had traveled 100 miles from London to the countryside because her husband's aunt had invited her to come visit. Standing on the dirt road, Mary looked up at the big country house. Then she grabbed her suitcase and walked up to the front door and knocked. Then, a moment later, the aunt's maid opened the door. She greeted Mary and took her suitcase and brought the suitcase to the guest room, while Mary headed straight down the hallway to her aunt's bedroom. When she got there, Mary gently knocked on the door and then opened it up. And when she looked inside, she saw the aunt lying in bed, and, the aunt looked up and saw Mary and she smiled, but she was very old and very frail, not doing too well physically, and, that's part of the reason Mary was here, to just kind of see her while she still could. But the aunt looked up and saw Mary and recognized her, and so she smiled, and Mary came in and sat down next to her, and for a couple of minutes, the two women just had some small talk. Mary talked about her journey from London to, the countryside where she was now, and, the aunt talked about what she was up to. It was all just kind of, pleasantries. But at some point, the aunt kind of stopped and looked up at Mary, and she had this obvious look of pity on her face. And Mary immediately picked up on it, and she's kind of looking back at the aunt, wondering what's going on here. And then the aunt just says to Mary, "Really, how are you holding up?" And immediately, Mary, when she heard this, she felt this knot in her throat, and she had to fight back tears. I mean, she knew exactly what the aunt was talking about. So even though Mary was a young woman, she was already a widow. Her husband had died in an accident about 2 years earlier, and it had sent Mary into this spiraling deep depression. I mean, she was still completely grieving the loss of her husband. He had been the love of her life. And, her extended family and her husband's extended family were all well aware of how badly Mary had been doing. And so they had been extending her invitations constantly to come visit and basically just not be alone. I mean, that was the reason really why her husband's aunt had invited her here, is because she knew Mary likely wasn't doing well. Now to Mary...
Man, I hate that for Mary, and it just reminds me of Young Noble. I don't know how many of y'all out there know who Young Noble is, but long story short story long, he was a member of the Outlaws, Tupac Shakur group, the Outlaws, and he passed away on July the 4th. And the reason that he passed away is because he took his own life, y'all. You know what I'm saying, man? He committed the S word. So it's like, he was dealing with a lot of depression too, just like Mary is. And I just feel like, and I didn't listen to a lot of different interviews from different people, his closest friends and stuff in the music industry, and they all saying the same thing. And it goes for this right here. This is an example right here. When you know somebody going through something bad in their life, you need to just try to reach out and just say, hey, do you want to talk? You want to have a conversation? You want to hang out? You want to do this? Are you good? You know what I'm saying? We got to check up on our family and friends, Bean Team, especially when we know that they going through something. Even when you don't know, just reach out sometime. Make sure everybody good, because a lot of times people can put on a smiling face in front of you, you know what I'm saying, and be acting all happy and stuff, and you think they good, but if you really just call them and just ask them for real, they may break down and just start telling you stuff that you never knew about, and you just try to reach out as a great friend or family member that it's best that you can. Let's get back to it.
This was nice in a way. I mean, she felt very comforted by the family members, and it did seem like people genuinely cared about her. But at the same time, she started to get the impression from basically everybody in her and her husband's family that they kind of expected her to, grieve this loss, but ultimately move on. Like, find somebody else, basically. You're young, like, get remarried, start a new life. But to Mary, she just wanted to be like, no, I'm never gonna find anyone like my husband. He was the love of my life, and no one will ever match him, ever. Like, I'm done. I probably will never get married again. Like, he was it for me. And so at that moment, Mary really just wanted to end this conversation with her husband's aunt. Like, she didn't want to get into how she was feeling about her husband because it was bad. She felt bad. But instead of saying that to her husband's aunt, she just said, you know what? I'm okay. I'm just totally exhausted from travel, and I'm going to go to bed. The aunt nodded and told Mary that, we'll have plenty of time to visit tomorrow, so go get some sleep. And so the two women hugged. And then Mary got up, she left the bedroom, headed to the guest room, she found her suitcase, got on some pajamas, and then crawled into bed. But a few hours later, in the middle of the night, Mary suddenly bolted upright in her bed. She was sweating, she was shaking, she was totally disoriented. It took her a few minutes to even remember where she was. But then finally, when she did and she realized she was safe, she realized she had just had this awful, visceral nightmare that she really couldn't even make sense of. In this nightmare, she was looking out at this huge open field. It's nighttime, and there's nothing but this field. But off in the distance, there was this broken down small shed. It was just sitting there conspicuously right in the middle of this field. And even though Mary was terrified of the shed, she felt this overwhelming urge to go to the shed and investigate. And so it's like with every step as she walked through this field closer and closer to the shed, her fear was rising. And then finally, when she got close to the shed, she began to hear what sounded like somebody moaning inside of the structure. And so now she's really scared, but she keeps walking towards the shed, and then she's right outside. She can't see into the shed, but she can hear the moaning, and she sees her hand just come down and fling the door open, almost like she didn't want to, but her body's acting on autopilot. And then she looks into the shed, and there's this figure tucked into the corner, kind of in the shadows, and it's the thing making these moaning sounds. And it turns, and Mary sees it's this woman, this emaciated, destroyed-looking woman, but her face is the same face as Mary's dead husband.
Oh!
And as soon as she saw that, it jolted her awake. And so that's where she was, sitting in her bedroom, trying to make sense of what she had just seen.
Oh my God, that just gave me chills. Especially at the end when MrBallen was like, the woman looked up and she had the freaking face of her Mary's dead husband. Ugh.
So after 15 or 20 minutes of Mary trying and failing to fall back asleep because of this horrible nightmare, Mary finally says, you know what, I'm just gonna go outside, clear my head, go for a walk. I know it's the middle of the night, whatever. I'll bring some brandy along and sip that to calm my nerves and just kind of walk around until I'm calm, and then I'll go back to sleep.
Time out. Time out, Bean Team. You know it's MrBallen video, so I gotta make my predictions. Are you meaning to tell me Mary finna go on this walk and literally what happened in her dream is gonna happen in reality? Like she finna be walking down the road and she gonna see a shed and walk in it or whatever, and it gonna be a crazy lady with her husband face or something? I know I'm jumping to conclusions, but I'm just saying we could be walking down that road. No pun intended.
So she hopped out of bed, she grabbed her flask of brandy, grabbed her jacket, got her shoes on, and walked out the front door.
MrBallen commercial, y'all. It is getting good, man. This is a great video from MrBallen, as always, but I'm really enjoying it, man. And I'm excited to see where we going next with it. Shout out to Better Health. Shout out to MrBallen. I'm taking it back right here. Let's go.
Of therapy. Okay, back to the story.
Back to it.
About 15 minutes later, Mary was walking up a hill with the moonlight casting down on her. She was sipping her brandy as she went and was already beginning to calm down. Now, Mary was used to living in the city, in London, and so being out here in the countryside was so different. It was so beautiful and peaceful and spaced out that she had kind of just begun walking and not stopped. I mean, she originally thought she would just stay on the aunt's property, but already she was well beyond the property lines and was basically just out exploring in the middle of the night, and she was having a nice time. And so up the hill Mary goes. Now, remember, Mary has never been to this area. This is basically an all-new place. She has no idea what's over here. And she goes up this hill, she crests the top, and she gets a look at what's up there for the first time. And when she sees what's up there, she freezes. She's looking out at this huge field, basically in all directions. And in the center of this field, maybe a couple hundred yards away, is a single small structure, a broken down wooden shed that looks nearly identical to the shed she had just seen in her nightmare. And as soon as she saw that, she's terrified because she knows it's the same one or it's eerily similar. But worse than that, when she saw it, despite her own fears and trepidations about being up here, she felt herself moving towards the shed. It was like her body went into autopilot the same way it did in her dream. It was like she had to go to the shed, even though everything inside of her logically is saying, don't go. But into the field she goes. She deviates off the path and just starts walking towards the shed. Her heart is beating like mad. And as she's getting closer and closer, she even begins to hear moaning sounds coming from the shed. It's like she's living out the nightmare in real life. She can't make sense of it. She wants to go back the other way, but she can't stop herself. She's just going towards the shed. And then finally she reaches the shed, and now for sure she can hear moaning coming from in this building. And she sees her hand reach down and she flings open the shed and she looks in, and sure enough, there is this dark figure tucked in the corner, clearly moaning, like this is her nightmare in real life. But when the person inside the shed turned to look at Mary, it was a woman, but they didn't have her dead husband's face. Instead, it was a woman who practically looked like she was dead or close to death. She obviously needed help. Now, at this point, Mary was kind of relieved. I mean, this whole situation is terrifying, but she was expecting to, somehow see her dead husband's face on this person in the shed. And so when it wasn't, and it was just like a normal person, albeit in a very strange set of circumstances, it was a relief. But now Mary didn't know what to do. It's like she's standing there looking at this woman, having no idea what to do. She doesn't understand how she could have dreamed this and now basically lived it too. Like nothing's adding up. But again, it was like her body continued to operate in this autopilot mode. She suddenly had this really intense desire to go into the shed and help this woman. She didn't know who she was. This is a total stranger in the middle of a field in a shed who's moaning and looks terrible. She has no idea what's going on. But in she goes, and she sits down next to this woman who's now kind of eyeing Mary like, what are you doing in here with me? And Mary says to her, like, hey, what's going on? How'd you get here? What's wrong? Like, what's happening? But the woman, it was clear she wanted to respond to Mary and, tell her what was going on, but, she was too weak. It was like she really was on death's door here. And Mary could clearly see that. Like, she didn't need to be told this woman is in a very bad way here. Now, Mary knew what needed to happen is this woman needs to get to a hospital. But they were nowhere near a hospital, and this woman clearly can't get up and walk. And Mary's thinking, I'm not strong enough to carry this woman to the hospital. Like, what am I gonna do? And, Mary's thinking, maybe if I just run and get help and they can come back here. But she's looking at this woman thinking, I don't know if she'll survive. She's probably gonna die soon. Like, this is gonna happen now. And so Mary, again, sort of in this weird autopilot mode, decides, you know what? I'm gonna stay right here with this woman. She can't even talk. She can't tell me what's going on, but I am gonna be here with her. I'm gonna be present with her. And if she dies, I'll be here to support her.
Man, Mary in a tough situation. She's in a tough cookie, so to speak. Like, seriously, and it's like, dude, I can't even blame her for the decision that she's making right now with just staying there with the lady. But if I was Mary right now, I'd be like, man, am I freaking dreaming again? Is this real? You know what I'm saying? I'll be having to pinch the hell out myself, punch and slap and all that to try to make sure that I'm not still asleep. Like, dude, I just freaking had a nightmare about this ish, and now it's actually in reality. Glad that it wasn't my husband's face on this lady, but still, this is real?
And so Mary just made herself comfortable. She took her jacket off, she put it over this woman, and then she began letting this woman sip from her brandy flask to, maybe kind of ease the pain. And all night, the two women just kind of sat there and laid together. When the sun finally rose the next morning, Mary looked over at the woman and saw she was still alive. And in fact, if anything, she seemed like her condition had maybe improved slightly. She seemed maybe a little bit more comfortable. Maybe that was from all the brandy. Who knows? But the woman seemed like she'd stabilized a little bit. Still couldn't talk or really tell Mary anything, but she seemed to be doing a little bit better. And so Mary's thinking, okay, the sun's up now. Now I can run out, get help, and get this woman the care that she needs. But before Mary could even do that, she began hearing a stomping sound somewhere outside of the shed. And she realized it was a horse approaching. And so Mary, she bolts out of the shed and she looks over towards the road, and there's a horse pulling a covered wagon going right by, and Mary screams and yells and says she needs help. And a man pops his head out of the wagon and says what's going on, and Mary runs over to him and explains this weird situation, how there's this strange woman over here and she's clearly dying, she needs our help. And the man agreed to help. And so he went with Mary to the shed, he picked the woman up, he put her inside of his wagon, and then the three of them together in this wagon drove to Mary's husband's aunt's house. When they got there, the man carried the strange woman inside of the aunt's house, and then Mary told the aunt's maid to go call for the town doctor, and so she said she would. And so at this point, Mary was actually completely relieved. I mean, this was kind of a wild, very unexpected night. I mean, she doesn't even know who this woman is, but she's definitely happy that she's getting, some level of care here. But Mary sort of felt like her role in this was kind of diminished now. She's gotten the woman here and she's feeling so tired and weak from being up all night. And so Mary decided she would just take a nap. I mean, she had been up all night with this woman. She was exhausted. So into her bedroom she went, she climbed into bed, but as she's laying there, she realized she wasn't just tired, she actually felt kind of sick, like ill. And over the next few hours, as she kind of tossed and turned in her bed, not really able to sleep, she would develop this horrible fever. And this fever would just get worse and worse and worse, and Mary would become bedridden, dealing with this mystery illness for weeks, just drifting in and out of consciousness the whole time. It was October.
Did Mary catch something from this lady? Did she get the same disease that this lady had? Now, I don't even know if the lady had a disease. I'm just saying, why did Mary all of a sudden get freaking sick like that, bedridden for weeks? Let's find out.
By the time Mary's fever finally broke. And on the day that it did, when Mary opened her eyes in this bed, she was clear-headed for the first time. I mean, really, it had been a very rough stretch of a few weeks. And so she's looking around the room, kind of taking stock of her environment, and she sees there's this strange person sitting in a chair in the corner. And her immediate reaction is, oh, this must be like a nurse or a doctor or somebody here that's kind of overseeing me. Mary was aware she had been very sick for several weeks and there were people in and out of the room, but she looked back at this person and realized she actually knew who it was. It was the woman she had rescued from the shed on the night she got sick. It was that woman. But now she wasn't sickly and, dying. The woman looked completely healthy and happy, and she was smiling ear to ear at Mary. Like, this didn't make any sense. Like, what's going on here? And also, Mary just couldn't help but think, like, wait a minute, why is this woman still here? It has been weeks since I rescued her from the shed. Why is she still here? Like, nothing's adding up. But before Mary could ask any questions, this woman, who clearly was super excited to see that Mary was now fully awake and attentive, this woman just starts talking a mile a minute, like she had been waiting to dump all this information on Mary as soon as she was well. Like, clearly this woman has been waiting diligently for her chance to tell her story. And the story that she dumped on Mary at her first chance, like this day, was incredible. The woman told her that a couple of years earlier, she had boarded the ship in England that was bound for Brazil. But about 5 days into their journey, while they're out on the open sea, the ship caught fire. It was this horrible fire. Everyone's trying to evacuate. And this woman said she was in her bedroom, asleep. She didn't even know what was happening. And while she's laying there and the ship is catching fire and beginning to sink, this stranger comes barreling into the room, literally wakes her up, scoops her up, and takes her to the top deck and gets her into a lifeboat right as the ship sinks. I mean, this stranger completely saved this woman's life. And so this woman, the stranger who had saved her, and a handful of other lucky people who had made it onto this lifeboat, just began rowing in a single direction, hoping they'd find land. And luckily they did. They found this deserted island. And so they landed there, and for a year, this woman and the stranger and those few people subsisted on this island, barely clinging to life, praying for rescue. And amazingly, after a year of being shipwrecked, they flagged down a ship that did rescue them and brought them to England. However, when they actually got to England, things weren't that good. The stranger who had saved this woman had basically lost his mind from living on this island, not expecting to be rescued. Even though they got rescued, it was like he wasn't coherent anymore. He had lost it. Not to mention he was really ill from the way they were living on this island, scavenging things that weren't necessarily edible, but just to survive, they were eating whatever they could. I mean, it was a very rough lifestyle. And this man, he just hadn't really handled it well. And so he got
like a year, being team. That's a long time to be stranded on a freaking island. They lucky, blessed. I'm happy that they just survived. I can understand this man not being the same anymore. What they just went through, that's crazy.
thrown in a hospital and placed in a particular ward for people that were mentally unwell, and he was basically forgotten about. However, the woman would tell Mary that, when this happened, she felt awful because she felt like this stranger had saved her life and she kind of owed him a debt. And so she decided it would be her mission to find the stranger's family and let them know where he was. And so the woman said she did some research and she figured out where one of his relatives lived. It was really far away on the other side of England. And so she spent all her money, using every vehicle she possibly could, every ride she could take, getting as close to this location as she possibly could. And then when she ran out of money, she just kept on walking towards this destination. And she kept going until she literally ran out of food and water, but she wasn't quite there yet. She knew she was getting close, and she's just walking, and she's basically falling apart, so hell-bent on finding this family member for this stranger, but she can't quite make it. She can't quite get to the family member's house. And that's when she finds this shed out in the middle of the field where she just collapses, thinking, okay, this is where I'm gonna die. And so back in the guest room, Mary is listening to this woman tell this unbelievable story, and at some point the woman just kind of stops when she gets to the shed scene. And Mary's looking at her like, I don't really understand where you're going with this. I don't understand why you're here telling me this. And the woman, she just starts to laugh, like this joyous laughter, just nonstop laughter. And then she goes, don't you get it? And then seconds later, Mary hears footsteps, and a man walks into the bedroom. And it's Mary's husband.
What the
He was the stranger who rescued that woman. He didn't die in an accident 2 years ago like they thought. He was in a shipwreck, but he survived. He was the man who got thrown in the hospital and forgotten about. And it was this woman who was making the journey to his aunt's house to tell her that he was still alive. And it was only because Mary had that totally bizarre nightmare that sort of led her to that shed that she found this woman who would have died in that shed and never quite gotten to the aunt's house, and so never could have told the family, never could have told Mary that her husband's still alive. It was because of that dream that fate aligned, and now her husband was back. Mary and her husband's story wound up being published in newspapers all over the world. I mean, people really could not get enough of this story. But despite how far-reaching this story became, nobody was ever able to come up with a logical explanation for how so many coincidences and this crazy dream Mary had, how it all came together to reunite Mary and her husband.
I'm seriously speechless, Bean Team. Like, I don't know what the freak to say, man. Are you freaking kidding me? For a split second, when Mary, not Mary, the lady, MrBallen never even said her name, so I'm just gonna call her the lady. The lady, when she was telling about the stranger that came and picked her up and put on the boat, for a split second I thought, what if that's Mary's husband? But I kind of like just glossed over it because it's like these people, they are gone, they got stranded on an island for a year and this and that, and I just let it go. But it did cross my mind. But what the freak, Bean Team? Are you serious? Like, this one of those ones that you can't explain. It was just fate. It was just meant to happen this way because, dude, how in the freak did we go from a dream? This dream, well, we call it a nightmare. This nightmare literally turned to reality, and just not exactly the way her nightmare was, because in the nightmare, the face of the lady was her actual husband, but the lady that she actually met in real life actually was saved by her husband. Like, it's so, this one right here, it's one of those ones where if MrBallen didn't say that it been reported and researched and said for many and many of years, it'll be hard to believe, Bean Team. This one would be hard to believe, but I 100% believe that this story happened. I bet we can look it up ourselves. We can Google it and we'll see that this ish happened. It's just like, how did it happen that way, man? All the coincidences and things that had to happen. Man. God is good, Bean Team. God is good. Long story short, short story long. Like I said, I'm really speechless on this one. I really don't know what else to freaking say. OMG. And I digress. I'm gonna go and let y'all go, y'all. This is one of them MrBallens that's gonna be on my mind for a while, Bean Team. It's gonna be on my mind for a while. But before y'all leave, just please hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and do all that if you ain't did that yet. Remember this. Love, peace, and happiness. Stay safe. Don't stop. Keep going. Yeah.
If you're feeling lonely today, come along and throw your cares away. We're really glad that you're our friend, and this is a friendship that'll never ever end.
Run!